You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast, of course, brought to you by Prize Picks and Game Time. As always, your guy Pat Lane here with my man, Matt St. Jean. And Matt, we are approaching the final week of the preseason. And so we're almost there. We're almost there to actual football that counts. Pretty cool.
Yeah, we're this time next week, we will have a 53-man roster. Can you believe it?
Pretty nice. Pretty nice. One week from yesterday on Tuesday.
Yes.
Next Tuesday will be the day.
It might take the extra day because if the Patriots make waiver claims on cut down day, they're not going to be processed until Wednesday, 4:00, I think. So if they cut below 53, they might not get to 53 until a week from today.
That's a good point. That's a great point. So also we got a few new people in the chat today. Patriots Production saying hello. Let's go, Pats. Michael over here saying Pats Nation, and of course we got our guy Old Man Mob out here.
What's up, guys?
The Bill and Brady of Pats Media. That's right. That's right. Does that mean we're both past our prime? I don't know. So anyway,
might be. I'm sitting here drinking tea because I got a cold on an August night. Like
that's the way it goes. We got another new guy, Boston Sports Love to see it. Thanks for coming through. Appreciate you. Look at this. Law D saying what's up.
Love it.
Love it. Love the chat getting involved. We appreciate you guys. Thank you. So Boston Sports Love wants to shout out to Cameron. So what's up, Cameron? Thanks for coming through. We appreciate it. So that's what we got. Oh, look at Mac Jones is in McCorkle. Mac Jones saying hello. What's up? Did we sign?
Matt, of course, asking if we signed a tackle yet. That's an appropriate question for Mac Jones.
We did not. So, but hey, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Nelson, how we doing, sir? Thanks for coming through. All right. Let's talk about the roster. That's what we got to talk about is the roster. When we get into the third preseason game, probably a little bit at the end. I want to talk about, I'm sure we want to talk about the Drake May stuff what's it called? That Gerard Mayo was talking about today. I totally blanked on the name. I had a very long day at work today. But yes.
Yeah, they also, I think, UNC's coaches or somebody went on Colin Cowherd and was talking about Drake May not having bust potential too.
Yes, that was Greg Cosell.
Yeah. So we could come back to that at the end of the show. Some interesting quotes on Drake May this week. Interesting. He's in an interesting spot.
Yep. Also, Scott, with a shout out to your hat because it is a dope hat. It is a dope hat.
I got this hat when I was up at the joint practice last week. I had barely taken it off.
It's incredible.
Since I got home. It's very
corduroy and everything. It's dope.
Super comfortable. They got the 2009 50th anniversary logo on the side. No idea why, but I
who knows? Doesn't matter.
Looks good.
Doesn't matter, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into it. Let's get into our 53-man roster.
Want me to intro the game that we're going to
let's intro the game that we're going to play a little bit, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a little almost like March Madness style bubble watch with the players on the roster right now. So I think we're going to go through all the positions. We're going to say we think is a lock to make the roster at this point, guys who we think have realistically no chance of making the 53-man roster. And then once we're through those guys, we're going to break down the guys that are left into who we think is in at this point, who we think is out, and probably what they would need to do on the Sunday to earn a spot on the 53. So, and definitely throw questions in the chat. We can bring up different questions as position groups come up through this.
Yes, too, exactly. I was just thinking that. I just started a few because I was like, we'll get to those when we get there. So, let's start with quarterback. Quarterback is I think where you just start, and I think it's pretty obvious. I'm assuming we're going to be on the same page. By the way, we did locks separately, so I'm interested to see if we have any different ones. But my roster locks for quarterback, and I'm sure they're your roster locks as well, are Drake May, Jacoby Brissett, and Joe Milton. To me, and we kind of talk about the outside looking in. I think there's almost a 0% chance that Bailey Zappi makes this roster. I don't see it. I think he's okay, right? And Jacoby Brissett hasn't looked great, but it doesn't matter. If Jacoby Brissett doesn't look great, that means that you start Drake May and Jacoby Brissett's on the bench.
Yeah.
Bailey Zappi isn't giving you anything. He's not the mentor that you want for your young quarterback. Jacoby Brissett is that guy that you want. He's the mentor that you want. He's the guy you want. So to me, that's the three, and Zappi is cut. And to me, the only reason why they've kept Zappi around is because they want him on the practice squad. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because otherwise, what's he doing here?
Well, I think it's that, and also he's experienced enough to just do the scout team quarterback things, and
right?
Stuff like that. I think we're 100% on the same boat. I waffled a tiny bit about whether or not to call Joe Milton a lock, just because day 3 pick, he's looked good but not exceptional in the preseason, and if there was a crazy circumstance here where a whole bunch of guys played well Sunday night, they wanted to keep them, and they thought they could get Joe Milton through to the practice squad, maybe. But the more I thought about that, I just don't think there are enough guys who could push him out of that spot. No. And I think the only path for Bailey Zappi to make this roster was if the Patriots were not comfortable with how far Drake May had come in camp and wanted another veteran who could play if Jacoby Brissett got hurt. And them talking today about being confident in him running a huddle and getting a couple first team snaps and all of that, that's out the window. So I think Bailey Zappi is gone. I think he's going to go somewhere else. He's good enough to be on a roster in this league somewhere, I think, even if it's just a third quarterback spot. He's one of those guys. He's at least good enough to be on a practice squad somewhere.
Yes.
He's been a starter before. Not that good, but there's enough there that some team will want to bring him into the building and see what they can do. And I think he's going to take that opportunity instead of staying in New England, where he'd be the fourth quarterback who's older than two of the guys who are ahead of him with no real chance to move up that depth chart.
Well, and that's a good point. There is certainly a chance that Bailey Zappi says, you know what, I'm going to sign on someone on a practice squad, but it's not going to be here, right? And I think that that's a possibility. The problem is that your practice squad typically is your fourth quarterback. And so it doesn't really matter where you're at. You're going to end up being that fourth quarterback anyways. I just feel like for me, that he probably ends up, on the roster here, I think, on the practice squad. But, you never know. You certainly never know.
We'll see what happens there. And maybe the new coaching staff this year helps things out. I think it's weird vibes with Zappi right now. And I feel he's in a tough spot right now where he's just getting a lot of the blame for things that happened last season. He didn't play that well. It wasn't for a lack of trying hard. There was a lot wrong in the offensive room since he's been here. We'll see where he ends up. But this is 3 locks for the roster at quarterback for me. One guy with no real path to making it. And that, I think, is it. There's nobody that's on a roster bubble at quarterback right now.
No, I would agree with you.
Drake May is not a bubble player.
I would say not. No, I would say not. And again, I just think Milton is the same thing. You took a flyer on Milton because he has that high ceiling. I just don't think you're giving up on that right now. And I think somebody else will take that. If you cut him, that someone else will take that flyer. So I'm not risking that. So, all right, let's move to running back. And Michael asked a good question here. He says, we need to figure out our RB3. Couldn't agree more, because I have 2 roster locks, and that is Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. And so now the question becomes, who is that third guy on the roster? And I don't know where to rank them, to be honest with you. I think I'd probably put JaMychal Hasty as the third guy right now, but Kevin Harris has kind of more of that. It depends on what you want from your third guy, right? JaMychal Hasty is more that speed kind of shifty guy, whereas Kevin Harris is more of that bowling ball type guy. And so I'm just not sure who's going to end up as the third. Ben says he thinks Harris is going to be the third. I think that certainly makes sense, but I think there's an argument for Hasty as well.
Yeah, I've got the same 2 locks as you. I've also got at the bottom end Deshaun Fenwick off. He was already cut, re-signed, didn't even play in the last preseason game. I think there's something there. He might end up. They liked him enough to bring him back, so he might end up on the practice squad. But I think he doesn't have a chance. I think this is a 3-man battle right now for 1 or 2 spots. I think Kevin Harris and JaMychal Hasty are in. I think Kevin Harris is basically going to be your, power goal line backup behind Ramondre, and JaMychal Hasty is going to be your Antonio Gibson backup. And then you got Terrell Jennings, who has shown some stuff. He looks good in the first preseason game. I think he's probably – I think Kevin Harris is probably ahead of JaMychal Hasty on the actual depth chart. But I think that Terrell Jennings is challenging Kevin Harris right now just because of the role that they play. Both of those guys are power backs. So that's something I'm watching Sunday night is, if Terrell Jennings goes out there and has a fantastic game, Kevin Harris is not locked into a roster spot. He can take that. And I think Harris and Hasty both have to play well to come out of that game feeling good on cutdown day.
Right. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about that. And so we'll see how it goes, but far from a roster lock for any of those guys. But I agree. Those 3 guys are all on the bubble, and who knows? So, so we'll see.
I will say, Hasty for me was the guy who was off the roster until the game last week. And that's when he was on the wrong side of the bubble. He got that big reception on the screen pass, and I got him to the right side of the bubble. And he made a play on special teams on a kickoff in the joint practice.
Yeah.
And that was notable because for guys who are around the edges of the roster, that is huge for being able to contribute there. And the Patriots use their running backs on kickoffs. They will use them there. They put them on the outside. Kevin Harris, I think, had made a mistake there at one point. It was Kwan Baker who made a mistake. Kevin Harris actually made a good play when he was on the kickoff coverage team in the first game. So, I think those 2 guys, they've played ahead of Jennings on the depth chart there as kickoff coverage guys as well.
Yep, matters. It absolutely matters. So, all right, to wide receiver. Oh, this should be a fun one. Wide receiver. Here's what I have for locks at wide receiver. Oh boy, I don't even know if these are all going to be considered locks, but let's roll with it. Tyquan Thornton. Yup, roster lock. Jalen Polk, roster lock, obviously. Pop Douglas, Baker, Javon Baker. And then that's really it for me. I know Reagor and Osborne are there. I think that both of those guys, if I was switching this to lock to probably will be on the roster, if I had to give my best guess, it would be Reagor and Osborne. But I'm not confident in saying that either of those guys are 100% locks because the guys behind them, have looked good at times, right? We've seen Kayshon Boutte make plays at times. We've seen David Wallace make plays. And as you mentioned, special teams, if that's a big part of this, David Wallace has made special teams. And so has made good plays on special teams. So, I think that there's a chance that one of these guys beats out one of those 2. But again, I think right now they're the 2 guys that are in that 5 and 6 spot, assuming you keep 6 wide receivers.
So I've got more locks at receiver than you do. I think you got the 2 rookies just based on, even if they didn't play well, it's based on draft status. You're not cutting the 2nd or 4th rounder year 1. So Polk and Baker on this roster. Pop Douglas, good player on this roster. Kendrick Bourne, a lock whenever he is healthy. He'll be on this roster.
Well, again, I'm not including Bourne only because he's on the PUP list, right? He's going to start the season on the PUP list, and so that's why I'm talking about the original 53-man roster, and he will not be on it because he'll be on the PUP list
unless he gets activated at some point in the next 3 days.
But
I will say this is what we said about Calvin Anderson last year, and he got activated the day of cuts and made the roster. So.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
There wasn't. They needed the body, but it wasn't. It was a weird situation. So Kendrick Bourne is a lock at some point to be on the roster. We don't know if he'll be healthy enough for day 1. I've got Tyquan Thornton as a lock. He has been a starter with the offense since literally the first day of camp.
Right.
He has only played with the starters essentially in preseason games. He has probably should have 2 touchdowns with better quarterback play. He's gotten open on a go route. He got open in the end zone on the play where Jacoby Brissett threw a pick. By all accounts, he's looked a lot better in camp this year. So, Tyquan has earned this. KJ Osborne is somebody that Mike Reese locked in earlier in the process, and I'm just going to respect his judgment here. If he's saying he's a lock, he's a lock. I think what helps Osborne, he's played an offense like New England's before, and he's super steady, and he can be a run blocker. While Bourne is out and while Polk is developing, I think Osborne will be a super useful player to have around. And like when you're in situations where you're trying to run the ball and you're going with a heavier personnel and you want to condense the receivers, it's probably going to be like Jalen Polk and KJ Osborne as your two receivers on the field. Two guys who can make contested catches and hopefully be in the right place at the right time and also get engaged in the running game there. So I think he'll be useful in that role. And then I only have two bubble players here.
Okay.
I've got Jalen Reagor and Kayshon Boutte. And I've got Reagor on the right side, and I've got Boutte on the wrong side of the bubble. For me, this comes down to a couple different things, but Reagor has played above Boutte on the depth chart, has more high-end talent. He's a faster player. He can also fill the role that Tyquan Thornton plays and add a speed element for you. And he's a starter on special teams. He's one of your top kick returners right now, and he's looked good in that role, which I think puts Kayshon Boutte in a tough spot. He hasn't played poorly. He's been the team's top receiver in the preseason. But that's, because he's down the depth chart playing against second and third and fourth stringers. And
right.
I think he's done basically everything you can ask. But he's a guy who isn't that good of a route runner, who's had inconsistent hands, who doesn't play special teams, and with a number of guys above him, I think it's really hard for Boutte to make this roster.
I kind of agree with you on that. I understand some people in the comments saying that, he should get more of an opportunity, that he should have. He's gotten a lot of opportunities. He's gotten a lot of opportunities. And unfortunately with Boutte, he is very up and down. Sometimes he makes a really nice catch. Like he caught the one-handed pass from Drake May. Like he caught, he had the long pass in the first game. But then he has some easy plays that he misses. And that's one of those things for me that it's like, okay, Javon Baker, I can live with him being inconsistent, right? We knew he was going to be inconsistent. We knew the drops were a problem. We knew that he had those issues. We knew it, right? That's why he got drafted in the fourth round instead of the second, right? That's the reason why you got a guy like him in the fourth round, because he's not a finished product. Kayshon Boutte's in his second year. He's not as good of a route runner as a guy like Javon Baker. He's not as explosive as a guy like Javon Baker. And so now you're giving me another inconsistent player, and it's like, well, where does this guy fit, right? I still don't know if Jalen Reagor is the answer. I don't know if, but again, if you're now giving me some value and use on special teams as well, then that's the way I look at it. Is I say, okay, well, if that's the case, and it's a tiebreaker between those two, and I'm trying to decide between Boutte and Reagor, that's what makes me choose Reagor instead of Boutte. And that's where we go. And unfortunately, it is what it is. And so, by the way, Old Man Mob with a great idea right here. If Boutte gets cut, he's going to the Commanders. I don't know why he would, but sure. If the Pats aren't going to keep him, see if the Commanders would do a 1-for-1 Boutte for Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson's a guy that, supposedly the Commanders are talking about maybe won't make the roster. He was a first-round draft pick like 2 years ago. And so, I don't know if he's actually not going to make the roster, but if that's the case, and you could do a 1-for-1 switch for Boutte for Dotson, I'd be okay with kicking the tires on Jahan Dotson. I don't know if he can actually play or not, but what the heck, you know what I mean?
Jahan Dotson has over 1,000 yards receiving in 2 years in the league here too, which is an instant upgrade. If the Commanders do that, you take that and run with it. The issue for Boutte, he was on this team last year and essentially didn't play. Tyquan Thornton played over him last year and he was healthy. Jalen Reagor played over him last year. They drafted two guys who are going to be over him. They signed KJ Osborne, who's going to be over him. Boutte's in a really tough spot to make this roster right now, and they're not. They might keep him week one if Kendrick Bourne is not going to be ready, and they want to keep 7 receivers and have some depth there. But I think when Bourne comes back, he's probably the first guy on the chopping block. And the other issue for Boutte here is because he doesn't do anything on special teams. He might be on the roster. He's not going to be active on game days.
Right.
Which is tough. And he's just, Boutte hasn't been the same athlete since his freshman year when he got hurt Yeah, he hasn't
True.
He wasn't crazy productive at LSU after that. He wasn't productive for New England last year with only 2 catches and one of the worst, maybe the worst wide receiver rooms in the NFL.
Yeah. Right.
He is the wide receiver 7 on the depth chart right now, playing with 3rd and 4th stringers. He's done everything he can with the opportunities he has, but I just don't see the path here.
Right. By the way, as Old Man Mob and multiple people have pointed out, Jaden Daniels and Booty both went to LSU and are friendly, so that makes sense why he would want to go to Washington. Whether they would want or not is a different story, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I've seen the name Matt Landers thrown around in the chat too. Somebody the Patriots claimed off waivers.
Yes. Yep.
From the Chicago. He's a very athletic, or he tested at least very athletically as a wide receiver. Big guy who can run fast. So at 6'4" with under sub 4.4 speed.
4.37 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The issue just hasn't translated to the field for him yet. So I think Landers is a guy. I think he's interesting because you're still looking for your practice squad guys. So if he comes out and has a good game on Sunday, the Patriots need a big body, fast receiver to be on the practice squad who can be in your scout team and help you, scout opponents. You got DK Metcalf coming into town week 2. It'd be nice to have a big, fast receiver on the practice squad who can run those routes and simulate a little bit of that for you for the defense. Right. So I don't think he has a shot at the roster, but if he has a good performance Sunday, then that'll be awesome for his odds of sticking around in the building. Yeah.
And again, I know that people want, Michael and Old Man Mob are talking about Landers beating Thornton out. This is just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Tyquan Thornton is not only going to be on the roster, he's going to be starting. He's going to be starting. He's one of your best 3 wide receivers. Like it or not, that's the truth. And so it's just, you know what I mean?
Your starting wide receivers, again, assuming Bourne isn't healthy, it's going to be Demario Douglas in the slot, Tyquan Thornton at the X, and either Polk or Osborne as your Z, your flanker.
Right.
That's what it's going to be week 1.
Yep. That's the way it goes. So, all right, tight end. So I have 3. I don't know if I should have 3, but I do. And that's Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, and Jaheim Bell. I think Jaheim Bell makes this roster. I just think he gives them enough. You've seen stuff from him in practice that he's a good enough piece that you can keep him around. You have 0 depth at tight end, like 0, like less than 0 depth at tight end. So much so that people are talking about signing CJ Uzama after he was cut by the Philadelphia Eagles. They have just no one. They have no bodies there. Henry and Hooper are both banged up. But to me,
and Mitchell Wilcox,
and so, and I don't think Wilcox really has a shot to make the roster either. I just think he's too inconsistent, and he's not a great blocking tight end either. And so, I just think Bell and by the way, Wilcox has had more snaps in the preseason. Bell missed a good chunk of time in the middle of training camp, and so I think that kind of put him behind the 8 ball. As he's gotten healthier, you've seen his snaps increase significantly, I think. And so I wouldn't, it wouldn't surprise me. I just think Wilcox doesn't do anything for you on the field. And so you keep a guy like Bell who has a little bit of athletic upside. I think that makes a lot of sense.
So I only have 2 locks here, and that's Henry and Hooper. And I think you have a very close battle between Wilcox and Bell right now, because when you have, you've got Hunter Henry out right now. Austin Hooper came back to practice today, but he was a guy who was banged up. Those guys are missing any time. Is Jaheim Bell ready week 1 to be a contributor for you? He is drafted as a developmental tight end.
Right.
He's an athlete who is still figuring out what his role is going to be in this offense. He was taken as late as he was for a reason. Those guys are not roster locks when they're drafted that late. So that is where Mitchell Wilcox can carve out a role as a guy who is a decent blocker and decent on special teams, who can execute the offense at a bare minimum level and give you some competency there. Obviously he hasn't really shined here in the preseason. But I think he's more polished as a route runner than Jaheim Bell is at this point, and more polished as a blocker. It's just a more polished professional player at this point. If Hunter Henry's out week 1 and they feel like they need a tight end 2 who can execute the basics, Wilcox might make it. Now, I say all this, he's also banged up right now. Right. So that is a factor for Sunday. Bell got more playing time this past week because he earned it in the first game. I didn't think he necessarily looked exceptional in those. He had some really rough reps trying to block, and he hasn't had great reps on special teams either. So I think this is a position where how you play on Sunday is going to mean a lot, because Bell is somebody they can put on the practice squad if they want to. I also wouldn't be shocked to see 4 tight ends on the initial 53-man roster. Like if they know Hunter Henry might miss week 1, might keep a Mitchell Wilcox if he's healthy over a Kayshon Boutte, let's say, if we're talking about the very last roster spot on the team, because Wilcox is going to be your backup tight end week 1. He's going to play 10 snaps on offense and 10 snaps on special teams. You have a specific role for him in mind that Boutte's not going to be a factor in that game. I think it's tough. It also wouldn't be super shocking to me if they ended up with 2 tight ends on the 53-man roster and they said, we're going to put Bell on the practice squad. Wilcox isn't doing enough for us. We're going to claim someone. So that's where I just don't think either of those guys are locks quite yet.
I get it. I totally get it. And you're probably right that he shouldn't be a lock. I actually have maybe next to his name because I was like, should I make him a lock? But nevertheless. So, okay, let's move on to offensive line.
Yeah.
And by the way, old man Marbit asked, if they could claim anyone off the waiver wire at tight end. I'm not sure who's going to get cut at tight end. Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see. And Jaheim Bell, by the way, I think has no problem getting onto the practice squad. He was drafted in the 7th round for a reason, and he hasn't shown anything in practice. By the way, just so everyone's on the same page here, Jaheim Bell was drafted when he was drafted because nobody knows what position he plays, right? They just don't know what spot he plays. So, it's the same issues now are showing up. The exact same issues that you had going into the draft, you're still having. Can he play tight end? Can he block from the tight end position? Can he run actual routes from the tight end spot? The answer to all 3 of those questions is no. And so I like Jaheim Bell as a developmental prospect. I still think if you get him in space with the ball in his hands, that he can be a weapon for you. But the rest of the league looks at him as a player that's not a true tight end. We don't have a roster spot for him. We just don't know what he's going to do. And so he could be a gadget guy, but are you claiming that guy and putting him on your active roster? He hasn't played, right? And maybe he balls out on Sunday and, and the Patriots have to keep him. Otherwise, he'll end up on someone's roster. But if we look at if it stays the same, and I love Jaheim. I mean, shoot, I have him basically as a roster lock because I think that he has a much higher ceiling than Mitchell Wilcox has. But if the same thing happens on Sunday that's been happening, I don't see why anyone would jump at the opportunity to claim Jaheim Bell.
Well, he's a game plan player, and a random team is not going to pick up somebody that they didn't like that much in the draft to put on their active roster. That's probably not going to happen here. I love him as a prospect. His best play so far is a 10-yard catch on a flat route that he turned into a first down, which is awesome. It was a great play. It showcased his skills. There's more to being a tight end in the NFL than that.
Correct.
Now, reportedly, he's gotten opportunities with the starting offense the last couple of days of camp and looked a lot better in that role. So, if Austin Hooper is your tight end 1 with Hunter Henry out this Sunday and Mitchell Wilcox is out, Jaheim Bell is going to get a real big opportunity. Mm-hmm. He might play 3/4 of the game. If he looked good, if he looked decent in that probably bumps him up to a roster lock in my eyes if Wilcox is out.
I would agree. So we'll see. All right. Offensive line. Mother of God. Okay. Michael asked who's still available at offensive tackle in free agency. The answer to that question is nobody.
There's Donovan Smith, but I don't think there's
Donovan Smith is not coming here. He's just not. He's not coming here. He's holding out for a contender to call him and say, hey, we know you didn't do this, but whatever.
Or if not a contender, at least a team that has a chance to make the playoffs. I don't think he's going to come to New England. New England has, at least before today and some of the injuries that came up, has said that they're not going to bring in somebody from the outside, which I'm guessing is because they're teaching a whole new system here and they're trying to develop guys. And they got people that they want playing on the field. Even if they aren't that good right now, they're trying to develop them, and they don't necessarily want somebody to come in and take that job.
Right. Exactly. So, all right, I have 8 roster locks at offensive line.
Same.
I
think we have the same 8.
I would assume it's the starting offensive line, which has been the same for weeks, which is Vidarian Lowe at left tackle, City So at left guard, David Andrews at center, Mike Onwenu at right guard, and then Chuks Okorafor at right tackle. And then the 3 subs there I have are Caden Wallace, Layden Robinson, and Nick Leverett. And not just same thing.
Yeah, I've got the same 8. And then if it's not going to happen, but in a world where Cole Strange came back and was healthy, he'd be a roster lock. I don't think he would have a starting. I don't know if he would have a starting job right now, but he'd be on the roster at least as a backup.
Yeah. What's interesting about the offensive line is that Layden Robinson has actually been pushing City So for playing time at left guard, which I think is interesting. I think Layden Robinson, if you're talking about just their best 5 offensive linemen in preseason, I don't think there's any doubt that Layden Robinson has been one of their best 5 offensive linemen. Now, is there a role for him? I don't know, because I think City So arguably is one of their 5 best offensive linemen too. And so do you take City So off the field to put Layden Robinson on? Like, do you get that much better with Layden Robinson as opposed to City So? I don't know. Now, Vidarian Lowe went out with an injury today, and Caden Wallace filled in at left tackle. If that keeps Lowe out for the game on Sunday, and Caden Wallace gets a good extended look at left tackle, that might mean that Caden Wallace is the starting left tackle, depending on how he plays. And so we'll see.
Well, we're in a tough spot right now. I know when we came out of free agency, we thought that there was a lot better depth at tackle this year. Mm-hmm. And since that's happened, Onwenu kicked back inside. Calvin Anderson has seen his play not improve, and now I think he's banged up right now. Yep. He's out. You've got now Vidarian Lowe banged up. We don't know what his status is going to be going forward. Then another depth guy we were talking about, was hypothetically somebody who they could develop into something, was Tyrone Wheatley Jr. Mm-hmm. And he's on injured reserve. So right now, you only have 2 tackles who are playing, and that's Chuks Okorafor and Caden Wallace, which is a scary.
Is Deach still on the team?
Well, I mean, you have guys behind them, but
right, yeah.
But I mean, we're talking about guys who you think you can put on a field in an NFL game and field a competent unit. With Deach is a guy who's a backup. Like,
right.
I don't think he's probably not making this roster unless these injuries really continue into the regular season. But it's just a tough spot to be in at the tackle position. Big opportunity here for Caden Wallace to develop. I don't think City So has taken the step forward that we were all expecting from him. He looks better in pass protection this year, but he looks worse as a run blocker. You got the reports about Michael Onwenu possibly putting on weight over the offseason.
A lot of weight. Yeah.
And I gotta say, like, I do not feel good about him at tackle right now, the way he looks out there. He had some rough reps at guard against the Eagles, and reportedly he did in the joint practice as well. That's a little concerning because this line is supposed to be built around a really good interior. Andrews is older. He's not the player he once was. So is being pushed for his job right now. And Onwenu looks worse than he did last year.
Who just got a massive contract.
Yeah. What's funny is that the tackles may be the guys who are actually beating out expectations right now. And they haven't been great either, but like Vidarian Lowe looks like a better player than he did last year. And Chuks Okorafor is passable. And Caden Wallace has shown he's put some good reps on tape on both sides of the line. Mm-hmm. Almost feel more comfortable about those 3 than I do the 3 starters on the interior right now, or at least not overall, but relative to our expectations coming into the season.
Right. And the real question for me is, what's going to happen, right? When I start to look at it and I say, okay, who's going to play where, right? And someone asked, Nelson asked, would you put Wallace and Robinson on the left side for week 1? I can't imagine putting 2 rookies on the left side of the offensive line. I can't imagine that. Now I'm hoping Onwenu bounces back because he's been a very good player. And so I'm hoping that he's just, he came into camp out of shape and he's getting back into shape. And I hope that that's just the case. But that's going to be the question for me, is what's going to happen with all of those guys. And you start to look around the roster and you say, there's nobody else. So look around the league and you say, there's nobody else, right? DJ Humphries is available. Like, is he going to come in and play? What? No, he's not. Yeah. Like, it
doesn't excite me. That's not an improvement, I don't think.
Right. And so, I think Lowe has improved. I still don't love him. I still don't love the idea of him at left tackle. In my opinion, the best outcome is Vidarian Lowe is banged up a little bit. And so he doesn't play Sunday. And Caden Wallace gets in there and plays really well at left tackle. And you sit there and say, you know what? Let's put Caden Wallace at left tackle. Let's leave Jukes at right tackle. And we have our offensive line. And, if City So starts to not play well, we can put in Layden Robinson if we need to. But, we kind of go from there. And so I think that's the best case scenario. But again, Lowe has looked okay. The problem with Vidarian Lowe is when he looks bad, he looks really bad.
Yeah, his bad reps are awful, but it's funny because I think Vidarian Lowe and Jukes Okorafor have played at about the same level here in preseason games. Okorafor is a lot more consistent. Vidarian Lowe has bigger wins and bigger losses. So it just kind of depends on what you want out there. Also, we're talking about, depth and roster bubble. There's not a whole lot on the roster. Like Calvin Anderson's on the roster bubble, but he needs to play and play well to prove he can be a depth tackle for this. He would have to come out and have an exceptional game Sunday. I don't know if he's even going to play.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, in theory, if he came out and had a fantastic game, maybe he pushes for a roster spot. Antonio Mafi, I think he's getting pretty close to being cut here.
Yep.
Yeah. Kellen Deach, I guess, is the interesting name here to push Calvin Anderson at tackle for the fourth tackle job if guys are hurt. He should get a look on Sunday, but I don't know if he's the kind of guy you want there. I think you might prefer to try to scour the waiver wire or make a trade. Cut down.
Yeah, I think a trade makes the most sense. We'll see, but I think like a guy that's going to get cut that you think, hey, is a developmental player, similar to what they did with Tyrone Wheatley. Of course, that didn't work out, but it could work out this time around, with a different player. And so, we'll see. But I don't know. There's been a lot of questions about Cole Strange. Cole Strange is not. I don't think he's going to play this year. I just don't. I mean, he's hurt. He's been hurt. He just is consistently hurt. And so I just can't trust he's going to be here.
When the injury he suffered is one that usually takes about a year to recover from.
Right.
That was late November, early December. So you're not seeing him before that this year. And maybe he comes back late in the season, but he's on the PUP list right now. And there's a deadline for when you have to be activated from that, which is is it week 10, week 12?
Good question. I don't know what it is now. It used to be week 6 or something like that, or week 8. It's what it used to be, but I don't think it is.
I think
anymore.
The PUP is that you can't play until either week 4 or week 6. There's also an end date where you have to be activated by a certain point, or you end up on injured reserve. I don't know if Cole Strange is going to be healthy by then.
Good point. Good point.
I would not count on seeing Cole Strange on the field this year. Because again, even if he does come back, he won't have had training camp. He's going to have to work his way back into shape, then get back with the team, and then learn the new system. You're going to throw a guy like that out there in week 16 for the final 3 games of the season and see what happens. Maybe if the line's that bad, you want to take that chance, but I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, Burley says that Cole Strange is another brilliant Belichick decision. We're not going to talk about it, but I will say, going to patspulpit.com today, my article got released about the last 5 years of the Belichick era and why the Patriots are now rebuilding instead of competing. So take a look at that if you haven't already taken a look at that. All right, let's take a break and we'll get to the defense. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. That means you can turn $10 into $1,000. Now, one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free wins. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Now, for me, I'm kind of going for that full year projections there. So I'm going Patrick Mahomes for more than 4,300 passing yards and for Aaron Rodgers for less than 3,750 passing yards because it's the Jets. You know they're going to screw up somehow. So download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. All right. So let's head over to the defense. So let's start with the defensive line. To me, there's only 3 locks on the roster, on the active roster, at least on the defensive line. That's Keon White, Godshaw, and Dietrich Wise. I'm going to assume that Christian Barmore is going to be done for the year. I'm just going to assume that. I don't know. Of course, we don't know if that's the case, but it does feel like that is the case. Now, if you want to put Josh Uche into the defensive line as opposed to linebackers, then I would make him one as well. But I don't know. I probably consider him more of a linebacker than a defensive end. Nevertheless, those 3, and then again, if you want to include Uche, then 4.
Yeah, I've got the same 3 as you. I've got Uche with the linebackers. Barmore's a lock when he's healthy, and then the other 3 are going to be starters for you. And then I have 2 more who are in the, I considered making them a lock, but I wasn't quite there yet. And that's 2 defensive tackles. Daniel Laquale has been their top Barmore replacement as a pass rusher. Mm-hmm. He's also been stout as a run defender. He's played pretty well in the preseason. He's played pretty well for the team over the past couple years. He is almost a lock to make this roster. As long as he doesn't have an awful performance on Sunday, I think he's in. And then Jeremiah Farms, who's really come a long way and I think turned into an all-around solid player. We've seen him flash as a pass rusher. We've seen him flash as a run defender. I think he'll be Godshaw's backup week 1. And possibly a starter next to Godshaw. We'll see what they do with that line. But, those guys to me are the next up and very close to being locks.
Yeah. I think that makes the most sense, that those guys are the next 2 closest. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to make the roster, but I think if you said to me the Patriots are keeping 5 defensive linemen, right? Well, we have our 2, right? We have our 3. Those, in my opinion, are the next 2. So I think that makes the most sense, with Farms and Uquale. So,
yeah. And then I think there might be 1 or 2 more jobs here up for grabs.
Yeah.
I think Tristan Hill, Armin Watts, and Sam Roberts are the next 3. Like Hill has been on this team since last October. He was on the practice squad, former 2nd-round pick. He's had good moments as a pass rusher. I saw that he was, I think, around the NFL, one of the top 5 pass rushers in his ability to get off the ball through the preseason so far, at least for defensive tackles. So Great get off, good pass rusher. Could be depth there with no Barmore. Sam Roberts been with the team since 2021, almost in that Lawrence Guy run stuffing big defensive end role. Mm-hmm. I think he's got a little bit of work to do. And they signed Armin Watts, who's a good player for Pittsburgh last year. He hasn't been able to replicate it in the preseason, but I think there's at least 1 roster spot that can be earned here. So I think those 3, if somebody has a really good game on Sunday, that's something to watch.
Yep. I think it's a really good point. I like Roberts a lot. Roberts, of course, won essentially the Heisman for D2 players, which is the same award that Kyle Duggar won as well. So, Old Man Mob asked about poor man Matthew Judon, Chris McCarroll, who, interestingly enough, went to Grand Valley State just like Matthew Judon. My assumption with McCarroll, and maybe he's more of a linebacker than a D end, my assumption with McCarroll is that he's a practice squad guy. I would be surprised if he made the roster, but he's a guy that's an intriguing prospect that you bring in because you figure at the very least we can stash him on the practice squad and see what happens, see if he can then compete for a roster spot next year. And maybe he can't, but what the heck, you never know.
Yeah, I think I look at the 3 guys that were added recently, Landers, and then I have them as linebackers, but Kobe Jones and McCarroll there.
Yeah.
Those to me are guys who are looking to make a good first impression on Sunday and turn that into a spot on the practice squad. I think guys added this late are gonna have a very hard time cracking the initial 53 without a crazy impressive performance and maybe some injuries or something.
Yeah, I would agree. You know what's also funny? ESPN, right? On ESPN's depth chart, they have Kobe Jones and Christian McCarroll, right? And Matt Landers, but they don't have Kellen Deach, which is really strange because Kellen Deach has been on the team for quite a while. So it's strange that he's not on the roster. But anyways, I guess it doesn't matter.
That's why I'll plug the site here. If you're looking for NFL depth charts, Our Lads.
Yeah, that's way better. I agree.
Yeah, that's anybody who's looking for that, trying to look at opponents too and see who's there. They have the most up-to-date depth charts out there.
Yeah, I would agree. So, all right, linebackers. Let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 linebackers on my roster, and that is going to be Anthony Jennings, Jawan Bentley, Jelani Tavai, Josh Uche, O'Shane Zaminis, I believe. Zimenez, right? You corrected me on that last time. Appreciate you. And Raekwon McMillan. I think Raekwon McMillan's done enough to be on this roster. I think he does everything. He's a decent linebacker, and he's on all of the special teams, making plays on special team as well. And so he's a guy that I think is basically a lock. And then, for me, that next guy for me that I've seen at least is Christian Ellis. Joe Giles-Harris has had some moments, but Christian Ellis to me is kind of that next guy. He's actually played okay at linebacker when he's been out there. And again, just like McMillan has played a ton of special teams as well.
Yeah, I've got the same as 6 locks as you. Raekwon McMillan. It's crazy. He has been with New England since 2021.
It's crazy.
He's only played one season because towards ACL the first year, and then had an Achilles injury in camp last year. He's looked very good, I think, in the preseason. He's been physical. So shout out to him there. Same 6 locks at linebacker. I think Sion Taki is a lock when he comes back too. It's a free agent signing. I think he'll find a spot on the roster. Yeah. I think Ellis and Joe Giles-Harris is a really compelling roster battle. I've got Ellis as well right now, but I think it can go either way depending on what happens on Sunday. I think if 44 out there, Giles-Harris makes some plays, he can take that roster spot, and I think there's going to be at least one roster spot available until Taki comes back. It wouldn't entirely shock me to see both of those guys make the roster. We talked earlier about Jaheim Bell being on the roster. This is where you start to look around the depth of all the positions, and all right, they might like Mitchell Wilcox and Jaheim Bell, but say we're going to keep Bell because we think Giles-Harris and Ellis can do what Wilcox does on special teams and take that role, and we're gonna build out the linebacker depth there. So we'll see which direction they go with it, but those two linebackers have played well together the whole preseason, and I think whichever one doesn't make the roster, I hope ends up on the practice squad because the team has some nice depth there.
I would agree. And TD, by the way, says that Uche is a bubble for him. He hasn't been great in camp, but he's the only real, actual pass rusher they have from the edge. So he just has to make the roster. He's the only guy they have that does that particular skill. He hasn't done a great job of it so far in the preseason and in camp, but I still have hope that he can actually do a little bit of it. And so we'll see, but I think he has to make the roster just because that's why he's here.
Yeah, and he has put enough on tape before in the past. His 2022 alone is good enough, even if you didn't love what he did in camp. They gave him a contract this year. They wanted him back. He knows the system. He's not a complete player out there. There was weaknesses in his game, but the things that he does well, he does very well.
I would agree.
I will say Nelson does ask in the chat, what's going on with Taki? We don't have an answer as to what is going on. I don't believe, but did they say he was week to week, or is that Mapu?
They said Mappa was week to week. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything about Taki at all.
Yeah,
so I'm not really sure what's going on.
Yeah, it's a very weird situation. And he was kind of brought in as the the Mac Wilson replacement.
Yeah, and McMillan's kind of taking that spot, right? So,
yeah, I have Taki as a lock when healthy, but maybe he isn't. Maybe that's premature. Maybe he is somebody that they would be willing to cut if somebody take that spot.
All right, so on to cornerback. Oh boy. So here's the deal with corner. I have 3 roster locks at corner.
Same. Look at us. Wait, to be clear, Pat and I did this independently. We have not talked about this at all. So we
haven't discussed it. We're discussing it for the first time right now. Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, Christian Gonzalez. That's it. That's all I got. Here's what I would tell you, and there's been a few questions about Gonzalez in the chat. TD asked what's going on with Gonzalez. Juan over here says, is Christian Gonzalez going to have a better season than his rookie season? I think was a good question. Look, here's the thing, right? I think when you look at Christian Gonzalez, okay, I'm not worried about him. I'm not worried about Christian Gonzalez. He has been very open about how in camp he's been trying different styles and trying different ways to do things. I think that he's a guy that knows what he's doing out there, and so he's mixing in other things. And so I'm not concerned. Now, am I pounding my chest about Christian Gonzalez Defensive Player of the Year? No, I'm not, right? But I still think that he's a good enough talent. He's still like, I haven't seen a guy move the way he moves at the corner position. I don't even know when. Like, he's just so smooth. He flips the hips around so fast and so easily. It's crazy. And so, maybe you want to say, well, he gets out physical, then he's not strong enough, and he's not this, and he's not that. Maybe that's true. Maybe he's a little too finesse or whatever the case may be. But, I'm not sure what's going to happen with him. Again, is he going to be an all-pro this year? Maybe not, but I do think he's going to be a solidly above average corner. And, if he plays the way he played last year, he's going to be a great corner.
Yeah, I think we're going to see rookie mistakes early in the year because he's still young. I think he has all the skill. I think he's still figuring out, exactly how to read things out. I do think, the biggest weakness in his game from a technique perspective coming out of Oregon was as a zone coverage corner. It's just an area where he's just not as quick to react to things.
Right.
And that's an area where he should improve.
Right.
So, that might be an area of weakness early this year, but I think you're still going to get the guy you hope Christian Gonzalez is by the end of the season once he's put in all the reps. And he's got a gauntlet to start out this season of
sure does.
elite receivers. You don't even really get a break until maybe the midpoint of the season. I think that game in Jacksonville is probably the first game where it's not, just crazy receiving talent on the other side of the field. So I'm not going to get worried if he starts the season slow. He's young. They're going against good players.
Right.
Next to him, and Jonathan Jones, has been banged up, but he's a veteran. You're getting from him. He's going to be like a B-level corner out there. He's going to play well. He's going to execute his assignment. He's not an elite guy, but he knows what to do out there. And when they go into varied defenses and disguise stuff and the complex things, he can do all of that for you. You can put him anywhere on the field. And then Marcus Jones in the starting role this year, he's been banged up as well, but I think you hope if he's healthy, he's a starter for you, hopefully a quality starter, a guy they're also asking to be very versatile defensively.
I love Marcus, as everyone knows. I mean, again, you can see over my shoulder here, like, I'm a huge Marcus Jones fan. I'm concerned about the health. I'm concerned about him staying healthy. We're talking about 3 years now and 3 injuries. It just keeps happening. And so he's got to show that he can stay healthy for a year. If he can, I think he could be really good for them. And so we'll see. He's small, but he has the physicality to play outside corner. And so, we'll see. And
then you mentioned, I had mentioned the disguise stuff they do. You talked about Marcus Jones playing safety, I think, before. And I think he talked about that today, that's something he's done a little bit this season. Patriots do a ton of the disguised coverages where they will have corners drop back into deep zones and play other spots on the field. And, this is year 3 in New England. He should know what he's doing with that stuff, and he's got the speed to play back there. So he should give you a lot of variety in coverage. I think I think the corner group right now is very low floor when you consider the injury histories of these players and the youth of 2 of the 3, but it's also incredibly high ceiling because Jonathan Jones is a guy who's been a very good corner in his career. Marcus Jones has all the talent in the world to be a quality starter, and Christian Gonzalez can be an all-pro level guy. And, if you get lucky and those guys all end up playing well together, this can be, a top 5 secondary in the NFL, especially when you include the safeties in that.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll see. We'll see.
Well,
now, here's the thing.
Let's talk about the bubble.
the bubble's huge at corner, right? Obviously, if we only have 3 roster locks, you're talking about a huge bubble there. In my opinion, the first 3 guys on the bubble are Alex Austin, Marco Wilson, and probably Shaun Wade. I'd probably then throw Isaiah Bolden in there as well, as kind of those top 4 guys that are on that roster. I think Azizi Hearn is on the outside looking in. I think Marcellus Dial is on the outside looking in. And I think Mikey Victor is also on the outside looking in. I think Dial is an interesting guy. I just don't think he's going to make the roster. And I think he's a guy that could be on the practice squad. So that's the thing for me. Shaun Wade, as much hate as Shaun Wade has gotten, and he's gotten his fair share from me, he's looked pretty good this preseason. So I think he's a guy that, can show you that he can play a little bit. Not that he's going to be a great player, but he can be a rotational corner. And I think that that's important.
He raises your floor a little because you can put him out there and he's going to know what to do and execute at a baseline level.
Right.
Yeah, to me, I think the bubble is, I think it probably has 2 tiers here, with the top tier being Marco Wilson, Alex Austin, maybe Isaiah Bolden. He's really tough to place right now, but Bolden's up to those other 2 guys, and he plays special teams, and they put him around, like they moved him around on the roster or on the field. So I think he's in a better spot. I think if I had to do a roster cut right now, I think they keep 6 corners, and those are probably the 3 that go with the locks. And then I think Shaun Wade and Marcellus Dial in that next group of guys who wouldn't be surprised if they made the roster. If they go out and play well Sunday, they could definitely earn a roster spot in the process. It's just tough to tell because they've moved the depth chart around so much. They're mixing and matching, and the defensive line has been so dominant that you're not really getting a ton of quality reps to evaluate the coverage.
Right.
So
True.
I think Marcellus Dial is the only guy who's been a negative on the field, and he's still got talent.
Right.
He's in a tough. Still have to earn his way back up to be into this conversation. I think he's a practice squad guy, but I think you probably keep 3 of the 5 and try to get the other 2 to the practice squad. Those 3 probably finalized after Sunday's game.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, Carlos over here checking in says Marcellus Dial has been really good on special teams, which he has, and I think that makes sense. He played, a ton of special teams in college, but I just don't know if that's enough to get him on the actual active roster.
Yeah, we've got Old Man Mob in the chat right now talking about Miles Bryant, saying he doesn't sound horrible right now. And I have to say I agree. I went back. A shout out for anybody that's on NFL Plus. They just added a new feature where you can sort through film and watch stuff. And I was watching just a bunch of the Patriots blitzes from last year to see some of the things they drew up. And one of the things that stood out to me right away was a play in the opener. The Patriots blitzed 7 men on Jalen Hurts, had 4 men back in coverage right at the sticks on 3rd and long, and just waited for him to release the ball quickly and then converge on whoever got the ball. And it was Miles Bryant who read the thing the whole way, came up, made a great tackle. He's a guy too, Marcus Jones banged up I think he's back now, but has been banged up. Guy who has injury issues. Miles Bryant can fill that role. He can tackle. He can play safety. Still question why they moved on. I get it because you have a lot of depth here, but I think Miles Bryant's probably better than what we've seen from Marco Wilson and Alex Austin. So
yeah, I would agree. And of course, he's now in Houston. So again, I hated him with a passion until I realized I had to calm myself down and realize that he's not a true starting corner. He's a depth corner, and that's okay. Some guys are like that, right? So
he's valuable as your backup slot corner, backup nickel back, backup dime safety.
Exactly. Right. A guy that can play every now and again, but you don't want as a starter, and that's okay. Those guys are valuable, especially in a league where a ton of guys get hurt. So
and he can, for his size, he could tackle too, which is
right. Yeah. So all right. Safety, I got 4 players locked in at safety. That's Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, Jalen Hawkins, and Brandon Schooler. Schooler, I know maybe technically isn't a safety. He has repped with the safeties, and I think, he makes the roster.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And I put Marte Mapu in this when healthy.
Yeah.
We don't know. They said he's week to week.
Right.
Which maybe that means next week they think he's healthy enough that they're going to put him on the roster and let him.
It's possible. Yeah.
Finish rehabbing on the active roster. I don't know. It's a weird situation, but I think his draft status last year kind of guarantees him that roster spot this year for now. He played well enough then. It's just a weird situation there with Mapu.
I wonder if he isn't one of those guys that ends up on the IR to then come back off the IR.
That's what I expect from him.
Right. That's the only reason why I don't have him as a roster lock.
Yeah. I think the top guy to replace him right now, and I think we're going to be on the same page, is Del Pettis.
Yep.
An drafted free agent who has not missed a tackle at the safety position, who has earned his way up the depth chart. He's been a core special teamer for them. He's played really solid football. I don't think he has necessarily been better than somebody like Josh Bledsoe, but he is, younger, newer to the team. So Bledsoe's been here a while, and they might say, we're going to go with a younger guy who played well preseason. And it wouldn't shock me to see Del Pettis make the initial 53, especially if he plays well Sunday, take Marte Mapu's spot while he's on injured reserve, let's say, and then you see where things land when Mapu's healthy enough to come back.
Agreed. So we'll see.
And you got AJ Thomas down the depth chart too, who I think has played well as a free safety. They've given him looks. He's not going to make this roster, but he is somebody I'm looking at for the practice squad. I think he has shown enough to earn a spot there.
Right. So, yeah, we'll see what happens at safety, but I think that kind of makes the most sense for me, at least. Yeah. All right. Special teams, and then we got to take another break. But special teams, competition's over. Chad Ryland lost. Joey Slye won. I've seen enough. I've heard enough. We can stop the fight. It's over. Again, at practice today, they had a competition straight up where they all kicked at the end of practice. And Ryland and Slye hit the first one, and then Ryland proceeded to miss the next 3 while Slye hit the next 3. And that, to me, is the end of that. And so Chad Ryland's out of rope. He's done. So
I don't have that as over yet for the roster lock, but I think it's incredibly close. I think it's still close enough that if Slye has a bad day between now and the next game, things might open back up, or if Slye performs very poorly in the preseason game, things could open back up.
I could see that. The only problem I have with Ryland is anytime there's any pressure on him, anytime it's a pressure situation, right? When they were at practice, right, and they were around the guys and they're yelling and they're doing it, he you could see that he was visibly shaken by that. He was. And so that's unfortunately kind of who he is at this point.
It's been an issue for him, except for that one kick in Denver, which is really funny. I do think Ryland has been improved from last year, though, as a kicker. And I think in general, we should feel better about the kicking situation, because I think Ryland, I think Slye will win the job. I think he'll finish this off on Sunday. But I think Ryland ends up on the practice squad. And I think he's a guy, he's got the leg to be someone worth investing in, developing, seeing if you can improve some of this stuff.
Right.
And, if Slye goes down with an injury, I feel much better with Ryland coming up as a backup to replace him this year than I did about Ryland's performance last year. And you never know, maybe Slye is a kicker for a year, and Ryland develops on the practice squad, and we come back in a year next season, and Ryland looks a lot better, and he's going to be your starter in a year into the job.
Certainly possible.
That'd be amazing. Yeah I will also say one thing that helps Slye here, I think, a little bit. Dude is big.
He sure is.
Kickoffs, he hasn't had to tackle, but he has shown he's very willing to get into the fray if necessary.
Yeah.
I think that might be a little bit of a tiebreaker there too. But neither of these guys have missed on a preseason game so far.
True. That is true.
Which is very good. We talk about the pressure. Chad's only getting extra points, but he's making them. So.
Right. And what's funny is that it's just kind of worked out that way because I think Sly has been the first kicker and then they've alternated. And so actually, I think that's not true. I think in the first game, Ryland was the first kicker, and they kicked an extra point first and then a field goal. And in the second game, Sly was the first one. They kicked the field goal, extra point field goal. And so, I think that's kind of how it went. We'll see what happens with Ryland. The hard thing for me, man, is like looking at Ryland, who was a 4th-round pick last year. When you have so many other needs, to draft a kicker in the 4th round is just unconscionable. Whoa. And then to do it in 2020 as well and draft Rohrwasser, who nobody had ever heard of before, right? And obviously that one didn't work out clearly. And so it's just like you've spent 2 middle round picks on kickers that have both failed miserably, right? And again, Ryland maybe someday could be an actual kicker, but right now he's not. And that, that's a tough one to swallow.
If there's anything that says that Bill Belichick lost his touch, I think it's that missing on 2 kickers, both of which were considered a reach. And I think the consensus board doesn't like drafting kickers, but even if you control for that and say the kickers are worth drafting, both Ryland and Rohrwasser back in the day still went way higher than they were projected.
Absolutely. Well, he had who's the guy with the specs from Georgia?
Oh my goodness!
He got drafted by
Rodrigo.
Indy. Yeah, Blankenship. The Blankenship. I couldn't Blankenship went in like the 7th round or something like that, and he was great for Indy for a year or two, and then he flamed out. But still, it was like, what are we doing? So
I didn't hate using a draft pick on a kicker, and I understood why they went as high as they did because kicker was a need with Nick Folk getting older, and I think the top kicker on the board, the Michigan guy Jake Moody, who was someone they had worked out. I think that's who they wanted, and he went, I think, the 3rd round, like in the 49ers traded
overall.
He went way higher than anyone expected. And I think when that happened, the Patriots were like, we're just going to take the kicker because we need one. Which is not a good strat. Like that's one of the issues the Patriots are where they are, is that they back themselves into a corner repeatedly of having huge draft needs where they have to draft certain positions. They end up reaching on players at those positions who don't fill the need because they aren't that good. And then you still have the need, and you could have used the draft pick on somebody else who's a better player.
Exactly.
Really hoping that doesn't happen again this year with the Caden Wallace pick.
Yeah, we'll see. I think Caden Wallace has looked pretty good out there at tackle.
He looks like he belongs in a way that some of the other reaches that they've had have not.
Correct. Yep. Didn't love the pick. Still don't love the pick, but I'm starting to like the player. So so we'll see. And then obviously the last 2, Bryce Behringer and Joe Cardone. They're on the roster. It just is what it is. Tucker Addington's here, but only because Cardone was banged up. So
he still is. I think he missed practice today. Or didn't practice.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but anyway, Addington will probably end up. He'll either be on the practice squad or on speed dial for if anything happens to Cardona during the season.
Yep, exactly.
Hopefully, I wonder if Brian Kingen's still around somewhere.
Oh God,
they have his phone number. It's a deep cut for anybody that doesn't know. That was the Patriots' long snapper for Super Bowl 38. Someone who was at the time a substitute teacher who had basically retired from the NFL. The Patriots, I think, had 2 long snappers get hurt, and they called him up and said, "Can you come?" And he came, and they go to the Super Bowl. And the night before the Super Bowl at team dinner, he slices his right hand open with a butter knife, try to butter a roll, and then goes on to snap.
Which is insane, by the way. Who has ever sliced their hand open with a butter knife?
Maybe it was a steak knife. Maybe that's what he was using. He was just being silly. But and then with that hand that he cut open, snaps for the game-winning kick in Super Bowl 38.
True. And one thing that people forget about that game is that Vinatieri missed a few field goals in that game, and certainly Kingen could have, the operation being different certainly could have added to that. But anyways,
I think that story, I think, is a Sports Illustrated article that I highly recommend.
Great story. It's a great story.
Yeah, look at Brian Kingen. You're gonna have a great time.
So, all right, take a quick break, and then we'll come back. Just some really quick things about the game on Sunday, and then Nothing is better than football season. And football season is so much better at the game. Of course, I have season tickets to the Patriots, and I love going to Patriots games every year. The tailgate experience is incredible. And, just being there with family and friends is unbeatable. But this year, I'm actually making a trip all the way out to Notre Dame to see a college football game for the first time. And I'm so excited about that atmosphere as well. Now, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats that you don't have to waste any time searching through thousands of tickets. Now, for this Notre Dame game, I did go on the Game Time app. I searched through the Game Time Picks. I found the tickets I want, and I bought them. But here's the thing that's even better about Game Time Picks, because they have all-in pricing at Game Time. And that makes it so much easier, because I'm not looking at the ticket saying, oh, it's this price, and then I get to the checkout line and it's $80 more expensive. No. That's not happening. I can actually see how much I'm going to pay before I do anything else, before I actually pay for my tickets. And that makes buying tickets so much easier. Now, you can take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. So, just quickly about the game on Sunday. I think the biggest thing for me is we absolutely 100% have to see Drake May. We just have to see Drake May. I want to see him with the starters.
We will. They said we're going to get all 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what the rotation looks like.
Right. But we saw it all 4 quarterbacks in the first game too. So, I want to see quarterbacks. I want to see him with the top unit. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I'm very curious what the rotation is going to look like. We've seen Drake May get run with the starters, but barely. He's just handing off, doing scout team stuff or walkthroughs with the starters right now, which I think is part of bringing him along.
Yeah,
I'd love to see him with the starters. I think it would be fantastic. It would be entertaining. Mac Jones didn't really get run with the starters, and he ended up winning the starting job without that. I don't know if Drake May can win the starting job on Sunday, at least for week 1, because I think it would. At least I don't think he can do it on his own. I think it would take poor play from Brissett combined with high quality play from Drake May to actually get that conversation going.
Yeah. Well, listen, here's the thing about Mac Jones, right? And you say Mac Jones didn't really get run with the ones, and that's true, except they had a joint practice where Cam Newton wasn't there, right? Because he broke COVID protocols, wasn't there, couldn't practice. Mac lit it up that practice in a joint practice with the ones, right? And that's when the tide started to turn towards Mac Jones being the number 1 quarterback. And I think that's that's one of those things for me that that really kind of gave him that advantage. Jacoby Brissett hasn't done that. He's been here, right? And so Drake May hasn't had the opportunity to do that. And so I think that, that to me is kind of where Drake May is at. I don't think Drake May is going to be started week 1 either, but I do think he's pushing for playing time earlier than we thought. And I think that, that's going to happen sooner rather than later.
Well, I mean, the other factor here is kind of that regardless of how good Drake May actually looks right now, the press is telling everyone Drake May is really good. And the fans just watch him throw a great throw to Javon Baker, and they watch an hour after Jacoby Brissett threw interception in the red zone. If it looks similar to that on Sunday, and you combine that with press reports saying May good, that's going to drive fans to be clamoring for May earlier and earlier. And you can have all the plans you want in the world as a team, but the second that it's week 5 and you're 0-4 or 1-3, and your offense has only scored 30 games in the first 4 weeks or whatever it is, and things are struggling and the fans are clamoring for the rookie, you usually just end up seeing the rookie at that point.
Right.
That is how this works.
Look what happened. Look what happened with Mac Jones, right? Mac Jones is in there, comes back against Chicago, looks bad, gets booed off the field, and he was never the same. He was never the same after that moment, right? And I know it happened before then, right? I know that after the bye in his first season, teams I think kind of figured him out. But that was the moment. And I said at that moment, Mac Jones is never going to make it in New England. I actually said it like to my buddy. I was at the game with my buddy, and I looked at him and I said, "That's it. Mac Jones' career is over. Like he's done here." And of course, he lasted another season and a half, but it was a disaster from that moment on. And you can't get in this situation where Jacoby Brissett's out there, he's working hard, he's doing the best he can, and he's getting killed back there, or he's not getting help from his receivers, and they're coming off the field, and he's getting incessantly booed, right? And now you've developed this animosity between the fans and your team, and it's like, we don't really have much of a choice here. We got to put May in, right? And I think that's a problem. And Brissett hasn't looked great. He has not looked great, right? That interception on Austin Hooper, or intended for Austin Hooper in the end zone, was a bad interception. It was a bad interception. Yeah. But, he's a professional quarterback. He knows what he's doing. He's a great locker room guy. And I think that, that's a situation where they want him around. Even if Drake May wins the job, I don't expect him to win the job week 1. Even if Drake May wins the job week 1, you still want Jacoby Brissett here to mentor him as he goes through as a starter.
And he'll give you a certain floor in quarterback play and everything. Brissett was bad in the preseason. He's had a rough time at points in camp. I do think he's at least a little bit better than some of what we've seen. He wasn't throwing Hunter Henry out there. It was some of the depth guys there. No Kendrick Bourne there. Some of the guys that you would hope would be out there with him. I think his decision making has been a little bit alarming in the preseason, but it is preseason. So we'll see. I'm just excited to see May play more. Forget the expectations. I think he's enjoyable to watch. The way he plays quarterback is fun. You do feel a little bit of tension every time he's on the field in a positive way, because any play can be a big play.
Right.
And that is something that we haven't seen in New England for a long time. Cam Newton really didn't feel that way when he was the quarterback. You definitely weren't getting that out of Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi the last couple of years. And even late career Tom Brady, it wasn't his fault that the deep shots weren't connecting. A lot of that was on the receiving core. Right. The last time this offense, felt like they were always within range of connecting on a deep shot, it's going to be like 2017, 2018, or early 2019, maybe, when they had a decent receiving core at the start of the year. So as a fan, it's a lot more fun to watch May out there, and he can run around and create a little bit. I've been impressed with his decision-making in general. He's got room to grow, but, I think the target for Drake May is probably right around week 5, where the team's probably going to come back from 2 straight poor offensive performances on the road against good defenses, and you come home to play Miami with Tom Brady in town. Like, that feels like the right moment for May, but maybe he earns it before then. We saw Josh Allen earned it by the end of the first week. It wasn't the starter for game 1, but he earned the starting job for week 2 within week 1. And maybe things in Cincinnati go poorly and Brissett comes out of the game in the third quarter because you're down by 30 points then, and May leads you to 2 or 3 touchdown drives in the fourth. And all right, well, he's your starter now. You're going to rock with him because you kind of have to. He's played well enough to force your hands at that point. So yeah, a lot of options. I did see Carlos in the chat. People were debating this on Twitter earlier. He asked the question, any thoughts on Gerard Mayo saying May needs to work on the operation huddle earlier in the week? I think that was the end of last week. And then today saying he could 100% run a huddle. I have my opinion here, Pat, but I want to hear yours first.
It was interesting to me. I just, some stuff with Mayo kind of has been like, I think Mayo's still kind of feeling his way through this, because that he should have never said that in the first place. And now I feel like he's kind of backpedaling a little bit. That's kind of how I look at it, at least. Now, I might be wrong about that, but that's how I kind of feel. But I don't know. That's the way I look at it. And I just kind of say, like, hey, I don't see that, like, him having, there's no reason for him to say that. Right. And now he reverses course in 3 days. It just seems kind of strange.
I think it was like 5 days. Here's the thing. I think that Mayo was asked, I don't remember the exact question that prompted the first quote. So somebody does throw it in the chat, but that felt like him answering a question about what does Drake May need to do to improve. And this is something that they have talked about all camp. The operation needs to get better. But it is, I find it very plausible that at the end of last week, they hadn't seen enough to feel confident in how the operation would look with Drake May out there. And then he improved the last couple days, and now they feel confident in what the operation looks like with Drake May out there.
Yeah.
Through happening all at once, I don't think is crazy. And it's possible that when he answered the question the first time, May was close to being where they wanted him, but not all the way there. And then he had a couple of really good days in a row, and now they're confident in what he can do. I'm not going to read too much into that at this point. I think it's also possible that Mayo just kind of follows the tenor of the question and the lead of it and just kind of gives the reporter what they want to hear. And then, yeah. All right, so Carlos followed up. Thank you, Carlos. He says, Mayo was asked if there's anything else Drake May needs to improve after his good performance. Okay, he was asked what he needs to improve, and he gave something that he could be better at. And then days later, after they've had multiple practices and gotten to review tape from the preseason game and everything, was asked, how confident do you feel in this thing? And then said, all right, yeah, now I'm 100% confident in it. I don't think there's anything there. I think that's just, here's something he could improve on. A couple days later, he improved it.
Right. I agree. So, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. People calling for Bazooka Joe. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry, people. It's just not. There's a reason why Joe
nearly ready to play real games right now.
There's a reason why he was a 6th-round draft pick. There's a reason why, guys like that are built like that can move like that can throw like that, do not get drafted in the 6th round unless they're not good. That's just the facts. Guys like that don't last until the 6th round unless they can't play the position. He can't play the position. That's why he got drafted there.
Well, I think he's improved a little, to his credit here.
He has, right.
He's looked better than I expected. He's had his good moments. He's earned his roster spot. But he's still very much a developmental guy. I think the footwork still needs to get better. He's got to get quicker at reading the defenses. And his issue, his issue isn't the arm strength, but it is the arm strength. It's that he throws too hard. Everything's fastball. Everything's 100 miles per hour. And because of that, the accuracy suffers. The receiver's ability to catch the ball underneath suffers because he's necessarily throwing catchable passes on those balls because they're coming in so hot. So it's just learning some of those nuances where he needs to get better.
Right. And TD, school hasn't started yet, but TD's not listening. You're not listening, TD. I didn't say good quarterbacks don't get drafted in the 6th round. That's not what I said. I said quarterbacks that can move and throw and are built like Joe Milton do not get drafted in the 6th round unless they can't play. Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round because he was slow. He didn't have a great arm, according to everyone else, and he was insanely unathletic. That's why he got drafted in the 6th round.
Well, and then the other issue for Tom Brady was that he had to split playing time with somebody, and nobody knew what to do with that situation. Right. I will say, I do think there's one aspect of Joe Milton that we haven't talked about on here at all that I think does merit some discussion in this conversation. And I can't believe we haven't mentioned this. When he transferred to Tennessee, he lost the QB competition to Hendon Hooker. And despite losing that competition, he was praised as being a great teammate through the entire process.
Yeah.
And I think that is huge because he's somebody that's probably going to have to be a backup in New England the whole time he's here. He's going to have to be the cheerleader for the guy at the top of the ticket. And
it's true.
He proved he could do that without an issue in college. So in the future here in New England, next year, if everything goes well, it's just Drake May and Joe Milton as your quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, TD, I'm just poking fun at you. But you're right. You're right. That's that's the guy for me that is your backup, right? Is your long-term backup. And again, it's an RG3 Kirk Cousins situation, right? In a perfect world, they both work out, and then you get to choose which one you want to keep, right? In some kind of upside down world, if your number one player gets hurt and the other guy develops into a good player, bam, you have your starting quarterback. If the 6th round pick doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. What are you going to do? You know what I mean? It's a 6th round pick, but you're taking that lottery ticket. And so that's why, to me, there's no way Joe Milton isn't on this team, because he is the type of guy. And again, if he's a good teammate, which sounds like everyone says he's a very good teammate, why wouldn't you want that guy at the end of your roster? If you can develop him into even a halfway decent quarterback, you have a guy that in today's NFL has the potential to be a really good player. And so that's that's the way I look at it.
And then I think you look at what this offense is trying to be and the way the team construction is at this point. It's a team that wins with defense. It's a team that wins with running the ball, and a team that's going to win with a play-action passing game primarily. If that's what it is, somebody like Joe Milton, I think, can be developed into a spot starter or backup guy for you. Right. Because, it's not one-to-one. But you look at what Joe Flacco did last year when he came in for the Browns at the end of the season. Didn't have a whole lot left in the tank. He's got a big arm. He can sling it, and he can hit all of his play-action shot plays and punish a defense when you give him the opportunity to do it. Right. Obviously, Joe Milton, he has the cannon, but he doesn't have, the ability to read the field that Joe Flacco does, to touch on the ball that Joe Flacco does, any of that stuff. But if he can develop it, right, and you're basically going to run the ball, dink and dunk underneath, and ask him to make 3 or 4 big throws in a game and try to utilize that weapon while playing good defense, and you hope that you get a couple big plays on offense, a couple in defense, and that's how you can stay competitive and maybe beat teams you shouldn't in a game where you got to go to a backup quarterback. I think Milton can succeed in that role, and I was impressed with the early returns in his footwork. I know Carlos had mentioned it in the chat. That footwork's been an issue for Milton, and it already looks better than it did when he was in college, which I think absolutely is, that's a very good sign.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. And so a long road for him, but again, you took the lottery ticket already. Like, just hold on to it. If in 3 years you're like, yeah, it's never going to happen, fine, you can let him go. But like, until that happens, what are we doing? Like, just hold on to him. So, anyways,
a couple other notes I can kind of give here to wrap up if you want to.
Sure.
Patriots have the last preseason game.
Yep,
they are. I was 8:00 Sunday night. Nobody else, I don't even think anybody else plays on Sunday. So look at the lone game there. And the cuts are due 4 p.m. Tuesday. So they're going to have to get home from Landover, Maryland, and then figure out that roster in pretty short order. I wouldn't be shocked if they have a rough sketch of the 53-man roster before they head down there. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they cut past 53. If they're between Mitchell Wilcox and Joe Giles Harris for the last player on the roster, and they're looking around and saying, we're just going to cut both and try to claim a tackle off waivers, I think that would shock anyone here. So I think that is the timeline. So we'll be back after with the games. So we'll have a show after the game Sunday. We'll be back next week, I think Tuesday night. Once cuts are in. Patriots will have the 3rd claim in the waiver order for after cuts if they want to grab somebody. So if there's someone they like, it's I think only the Commanders and the Panthers ahead of them, same as the draft order, that they're going to have to deal with 1 players. So that's what that 48-hour window Sunday into Tuesday ends up looking like. You'll get the claims on Wednesday as that extends out to 72 hours. And then one other random note here for you, Pat.
Okay.
Based on practice footage, it looks like the Commanders might be wearing their black alternate jerseys on Sunday.
Those are actually fire. Those are fire jerseys. Love it. Nope. I love it. I stand by it. They're way better than the current ones they have.
I think the Commanders' black alternate jersey might genuinely be the worst single uniform in the entire league.
That's crazy.
They look like the Steelers. It's just the Steelers color rush jersey with a little bit of red on it for a team that wears red and yellow as their primary colors. You turn on the TV, you don't even know what team's playing.
I mean, you're not wrong about that, but who cares what team is playing? They look cool.
Well, I want to know if the Commanders are on my TV so I could change the channel.
You'd rather watch the Steelers
than the Commanders the last few years? Yes.
Steelers stink too.
Yeah, they stink, but they're better than what the Commanders have been.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong about that. So
I think I also just think it's like a very awkward, like trying to be military dress up thing.
I get it. No, I get it. You're not wrong. I just think that that's so. What was I going to add to your point? I feel like I was going to add to the point that you made. What was the first point you made? I just lost it after you mentioned the black jerseys.
I say things and they immediately leave my head, so I don't know if I'm of any use here.
No idea. All right.
I was talking about the quick turnaround from being.
Oh, right. So what I was going to say about that was that I like this quick turnaround because it allows the Patriots to do like a trial run for a Sunday game. So I like that where they're kind of preparing. You're not playing a Thursday night game, you're playing a Sunday game. And so I think this was done intentionally by the Patriots to ask, like, hey, can we play a Sunday game for the last game? Because then we can kind of do, hey, it's not, this week, Tuesday is a Thursday or Tuesday is a Friday. No. This week, Friday is a Friday. Like, this is what we're going to do to get ready. So I think that's kind of, that's where I'm at with it. So I like that. And so we'll see, and ultimately what's going to happen here and a lot of some of these roster locks and Commodity over here just kind of says like they won't be good until they have elite talent. Like that's true. Yes, I agree. They don't have a lot of that right now. Okay. But I think that there are some promising young guys that can develop into good players. Now what you have to do is hit on those first round draft picks. You have to see more from Christian Gonzalez. You have to see, Drake May has got to get on the field and play well. You have to have Keon White take a step up. You have to have Tyquan Thornton take a step up this year if that's the case. You have to have, Caden Wallace start to play better. You have to have Jalen Polkser. And now all of a sudden those early draft picks have to become elite talent players or at least close to elite talent players. And that's how you really compete in this league. And until that happens, they won't. But I think that there's at least a decent foundation for them to start moving in that direction. Yeah.
Yep. And we'll get more of an idea of where they are with this group Sunday night. Excited to see all these young guys play.
That's right. Yeah. And listen, and we'll talk about this, and we're going to continue to talk about this. Don't worry about, GD says get ready for 2-15 to 3-14. Don't worry about the record. The record doesn't matter. The way that the kids play, that's what matters.
Yeah.
Okay. The way the kids play.
The success of this entire season comes down to if Drake May looks like a good quarterback, because you can bust in the entire draft class, but if you get a quarterback who can be a top 10 quarterback in the league, that instantly means you can be a contender at any point.
100%. 100%. And that's what it comes down to. If you can see that by the end of this year, and if you can get performances from guys like, like Jalen Polk and like Caden Wallace and Keon White takes a step forward and when Christian Gonzalez plays well and so on and so forth, those are the things where now you start to say, okay, now next year, if we hit on our first round pick again next year and we add a few guys in free agency, all of a sudden we can be competitive again. Not for a championship just yet, but like, hey, if we get that guy, Drake May's that dude, we're on our way. You know what I mean? And so, and you can build the rest of that roster around him, right? But you have the guy. That's the most important thing. So, so we'll see.
I got two quick final notes here. One, we also haven't talked about, this is going to be Drake May versus Jaden Daniels. It's preseason, so it doesn't matter that much. But it will be, the quarterback the Patriots took versus the one that some wanted. And same from the other end, the one that they took and the one that they passed on. So, if one of the quarterbacks looks dramatically better than the other, that is going to be a story coming out of this.
Absolutely. Yep.
With my only other note, Patriots dropped a nice little mic'd up clip today. Bryce Beringer, the punter, mic'd up for a coughing corner punt against the Eagles.
In concussion protocol now.
Great content. Yeah, tapped his head like 50 times when he came to the sideline.
It was great. That was a lot of fun. So, and the Daniels May thing is going to be interesting. That's going to follow them around forever. And the McCarthy thing eventually, and even Bo Nix now, who's going to be the day one starter in Denver, those will be questioned. Now, I don't think Bo Nix has a serious argument against Drake May. I think even if Bo Nix ends up being a really good quarterback, that no one in their right mind would have taken Bo Nix over Drake May, but that's just my opinion. But that's the way I look at it. And so, we'll see. But it's going to be an interesting storyline to see Daniels versus May. I do know there are people in the building that like Daniels over May and would have taken Daniels if they were at 2. Now, whether that would have made it all the way to the top, whether there was enough guys to pound that table and say Jaden Daniels is the pick, I don't know. But we obviously don't know, right? Because because Chad Rowland hit that field goal in Denver. But that's okay. And you know what? If Chad Rowland missed that chip shot field goal against the Giants, and then hit the long field goal against the Broncos, and those two things, A, kept the Patriots at pick number 3, and B, dropped the Patriots back to pick number 3. And so, they both, maybe Chad Rowland is a New England legend, and we talk about him forever because we ended up with Drake May instead of Jaden Daniels. You never know. So, anyways,
right.
So
we'll be back after the game Sunday.
After the game Sunday, I got to figure out exactly when after the game Sunday. We'll let you guys know that ahead of time, but we'll be back after the game on Sunday. And then Tuesday night after cut down day, I will be back talking about the initial 53-man roster. Thanks for tuning in. We always appreciate it. The chat was blowing up today. A bunch of new people in the chat and a bunch of old people in the chat as well. We appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming through as always. And we will talk to you guys on Sunday night after the final preseason game of this season.